All right. There have been 4 seasons of this show, over 40 plus episodes, and it all comes down to one night, Sunday, May 28th, 2023, is your finale for Succession. Arguably one of the biggest shows in the last decade, one of the biggest shows right now. Both critics and fans love it. And now we will see who is the one or group of people who is going to take over Waystar and become the succession to Logan Roy. So this is a big episode. And by the way, there's 38 episodes, so it's going to end on 39. And time to break it down. So first, let's introduce Ryan Page here to join me. What's up, Ryan?
Hey Matt, how's it going?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for joining us with this big monumental commentary for this big TV event.
This
So
is
let
it.
us let us ask the big question right now. In a few words or less, Ryan, tell me, who do you think is going to be the new CEO or group of CEOs for Waystar? Tell me, who do you think is the new succession to end the series?
Okay, in a few words or less. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Could be anyone. Could be Jerry. It could be anyone. Doesn't matter. Matson is going to get the company, and he's going to pick anyone who doesn't have the last name Roy to be in charge. That does not mean Greg. I've seen that. It's not going to be Greg. Internet needs to sit down, take a nap, wait till Sunday. Cousin Greg is not the CEO going forward. But Matson's going to screw the Roy children. All of them are going to lose. Every single one of them is going to lose. No one's going to. None of them are going to be the CEO. Do I think it's actually going to be Jerry? No, but it could be anyone. It could be any of the older folks that we've seen. It could be someone that we've barely even paid attention to, the Volter guy from like season one. It literally could be anyone. Matson is just going to make sure that it's not one of the Roys. That's how it ends. And what we watched the Roys, who have been terrible for 4 seasons, finally get their just desserts as their kingdom is taken away from them. The one thing they've all tried to do from their dad to save it, that's what's going to end. They're all going to lose it now that Logan's gone.
Perfect. I like that. And yeah, and I think it's fair to say for everyone, a spoiler alert. And if you are watching this podcast, you have seen the first 38 episodes.
Yes.
So no re so just a quick recap for anyone who is joining. Long story short, you have the Roy family who owns this big media conglomerate, a fictional one named Waystar. The father, Logan Roy, started it, and he was the one. You can compare Waystar to like a News Corp,
Mm-hmm.
a NBC Universal, a Paramount, which used to be Viacom. Allegedly, they are inspired by the Murdoch family, Rupert Murdoch of News Corp and
Yeah.
Fox News and Fox 21st Century Fox, but they sold that to Disney and all that. And for 4 seasons, you've seen his 4 children, well, mostly three, but his children and other people try to succeed him in his old ailing age. Had a stroke in the first episode of the series. Now, obviously, at this point that he died at the early season 4. I think
Mm-hmm.
season 4, episode 3 or 4.
Episode three, I
Three.
believe.
So a whole 7 weeks have taken place. And something to note, I think, is important that the way this fourth season goes is that each episode is in real time. So 10 episodes in 10 days. And yeah, so at this point, if you've seen the penultimate episode, which I always think is the episode that decides if a show is great or not in its run, I think the second to last episode is more important than the last one,
A lot of
arguably.
times, yeah.
And at this point, we have a bunch of different options. And we talked about Ryan's theories. Well, before we record, Ryan has 3 theories. He gave his favorite one. So
Yes.
before we branch off of that one, and at this point, we have Roman and Kendall, quote unquote, teaming up. We have Shiv doing her own thing, but she's under Lucas Madsen's role, under her wing. And Lucas owns his own conglomerate. It's GoPro, not GoPro,
Gojo.
Gojo.
He's like
And
the Elon Musk, if you will. If you're looking for a comparison, he's not from America. He's a foreign businessman with a large tech company that's looking to acquire Waystar. So yeah, he's kind of the Elon Musk of this world, very eccentric, very techie. Lucas Matson, yeah.
Right. So he is, I guess, the unofficial antagonist, though. I think one of the weaknesses of the show, it's not that bad, but it's more about the family turmoil, but there isn't really a quote unquote villain per
Well,
se. I mean, there's always there and there, but you were saying?
it's almost I don't everyone calls the show Shakespearean because it's very obviously a play on King Lear, which is a Shakespeare play. But I don't
Mhm.
want to talk about that. When I say Shakespearean, I mean a lot of times in Shakespeare, your protagonists are or your main focus is actually the antagonist.
Mhm.
I mean, when you look at I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of examples when you look at Shakespeare where you're following the worst person. That's who you're starting on. You know, your tragic figure is sort of the villain,
Mhm.
who's just the hero of their own story. And by the end, you know, you get the Macduffs of the world, or you get Cordelia in the case of King Lear
Yeah.
returning with her army of Britain and trying to take out all of the people that we've been following this entire time. So Shakespeare does that a lot, and again, obviously based on King Lear, which I've only seen once. So sorry if I'm not perfect on that.
Mhm.
And also, but more importantly, just all of Shakespeare does have this kind of very centered focus on imperfect people, who are again essentially the protagonist is the antagonist. They're wrapped up in the same, and depending on which act you're in, they will switch roles. A lot of times, the protagonist is only the protagonist in the first act, and slowly becomes the antagonist in the third act. And so I think that they're kind of going with a similar idea that all of the kids are equally the protagonist and the antagonist to one another at any
Yeah.
given point. And I think even within episodes, we see that there's no like season long villains necessarily. I mean,
Mhm.
we can talk about them, but I think Roman, Shiv, and Kendall, I mean, you can watch it, have all throughout various different arcs, and Logan have been both the protagonist and the antagonist throughout the series, which I actually like because it's just different. You don't see it a lot on
Right.
TV. So, yeah.
And I think that is a great point, and it's part of the obvious character development. And because their performances of all these actors is
Oh,
just
well, yeah.
so incredible that you feel it. Just with Madsen, um, he's just kind of there, but he is
Mm,
a force to be reckoned with. That's basically my
yes.
point there. But maybe that's also intentional. But regardless, you have Shiv doing her own plan with Madsen. Um, we see if Tom, who's in charge of ATN, maybe he takes it over. Cousin Greg would be funny. Maybe Connor does as the goofy older son. Then we also have the other execs in Jerry, Carl, and Frank, and other outsiders like Stewie and such. But to keep with your first theory that in the end, nobody wins. Lucas is the one to acquire it. We know the quote unquote plot that with the presidential election and the new president elect, can you just remind me of his name really quick?
Jared Bankin.
Jared Bankin, that he can
Mankin, yep.
Mencken, that he can stop the merger on a government standpoint. But we always see clues that he might not even be interested in that as well. If you've seen the end of see at the end of the last episode, but you ultimately see Lucas taking it, and then the Roy's left out to dry. But at least they'll be rich.
Well, yeah. So at the end of the episode, Matson is very specific. He tells Shiv that they talk to Menken's people and they can make an American CEO work, which is part of Shiv's plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
To get the new alt right president not to veto this deal on her brother's behalf, by putting herself up as an American born CEO, so it's easier to sell to the American people. He didn't say you, he just said American CEO, which is kind of basically what I'm hinging this entire thought on, is that
Right.
he's already thinking about a different American CEO that isn't from our core group. And I think that if that does happen, yes, they'll all be rich, of course, but everyone's going to lose, with the exception of Greg. And I could get into my Greg theory because I think this happens regardless of who wins. But I do think Greg will be, because it's interesting because everyone's like Greg could be the CEO. You know, he's playing all the side, and I get it. It's funny, but that would be like the Bran Stark moment of this show.
And that's the Game of Thrones
Yeah, Game of
references
Thrones.
there.
Everyone hated that. It was just out of left field. Someone who made absolutely no sense. No one like Greg, while funnier and more like people like cousin Greg a lot more, and he's also more central to the family. It's just he's what he's supposed to be like our age, maybe
Yeah,
a
he only
little
has 2 years.
older.
He only has 2 years experience.
It's
No,
not him.
the actor himself's 34, Nicholas.
Well, the actor, but I
Um,
meant the character is supposed to
oh
be
yeah,
like
yeah,
early
exactly.
30s,
He's
you know?
early 30s.
Yeah.
Nicholas Baum, who I found out is actually grew up in Fairfield.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Look at that.
Yeah,
But go Connecticut.
for
But it's
real.
not gonna be because of Greg.
Yeah,
But
and
I do
honestly, could
think
I also add with
yeah,
that,
go
if
for it.
Cousin Greg got it, that is such a sitcom way to end the
Yeah. Or
series.
like a
Like
Netflix thing, you know what I mean?
that, of course, the goofy cousin gets it, and that just first of all doesn't make sense to the narrative. I really think this is a very smart writing staff,
Oh yeah.
and I just don't think they would make such an obvious silly play like that. And as you mentioned, with another show with Thrones being involved and who's taking over, like Game of Thrones, where they took this random character and make him win. I don't think they'll do that again.
So I will say I do think that the show because people I think are saying that because Greg is underestimated, right? That's the kind
Mhm.
of the crux of that argument. I do think Greg actually takes over for ATN. I think Matson picks someone else and is in charge, wins the deal, like I said. I think Tom may keep a job, might be moved over or demoted. There might be some sort of way they keep Tom in the company as a kind of last screw you to the Roy family, where Tom now
Mhm.
has to either directly or indirectly work for Greg. So I do think that that could still happen with Greg taking over ATN because we know that he was part of the decision to call the election for Mencken early. So I think that he'll be rewarded for that. And we know that Matson likes Greg. And he knows that he can control Greg. He knows Greg is weak, but he likes him well enough. And so Matson can keep his authority if Greg is in charge at ATN. So I do think that could happen. I think, I mean, do you want to go the theory as is? Like,
For the next theory.
no, this theory. I
Oh
think
yeah,
that
this
because
yeah,
where
stick with
everybody
this one.
ends, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Shiv and Tom actually reconcile, and I mean legitimately reconcile. Um, so they're out. They got their money, of course, from the sale. They'll be
Yeah.
fabulously wealthy. But now at this point, Shiv has no shot at power. Tom has no shot at power. He's underneath Greg, even like he's fallen so far. And so both people at their weakest point, two people who have constantly fought for power throughout the entire series, will basically just have each other and their kid that they have on the way with
Yes,
one
Shiv
another.
is pregnant, and it really, you know what I hate? I hate
Yeah.
when she drinks as a character. Clearly,
Well, I
haven't
mean,
disregarded that. I know,
medically, there are times in a pregnancy that you can drink without any issue to the child. It's very limited times, but since this does
and
take
we
place
did
over the course of a week or whatever, she probably is fine. Probably. I
it.
don't know. I don't know how pregnant she is, but just a little sidebar. I would say that I think that Shiv and Tom's final story is that she couldn't be Logan. She couldn't be. She doesn't have it in her. I don't think she does. She thinks she does, and she's going into the final episode as the main alternative to Kendall. But I don't think she has it in her. But what she does have, she can beat her dad, even though she can't, take his company by actually having a
Mhm.
family. Something that Logan could never do. For as much money and as much power as Logan wielded, he could never have a normal family, a real family. He screwed that up. You know what I mean? Like all of them are screwed. And so I think that that's where that ends. I think Roman will land on his feet. Maybe Jerry. I think Jerry and Carl. We kind of saw them show some sympathy. Both of them don't like Roman at this point, but I think they could maybe help him land on his feet after what I was a little scared for Roman at the end of episode 9. Actually, I thought he might actually get trampled in the street. I thought that might be how the episode ended.
Yeah,
Like
we saw him.
trampled.
He
Yeah.
clearly, we saw in that at the end of the second to last episode, he clearly needs his dad, and he's lost without him.
Yeah, but I thought he could end up dying in the stampede of
Yeah,
people, but he
especially
didn't.
second to last episode,
Yeah,
anything's on the table.
he didn't. And I think that he'll leave. He may go to the UK, may go somewhere else. If you recall, at the very beginning of this season, all of the Roy kids, as soon as they heard their dad was trying to get Pierce and all that stuff again,
Mhm.
um, they abandoned their plan to try and take that. Shiv and Kendall both wanted to steal it from their dad. Roman did not. Roman genuinely wanted to do his own thing, and so I think he's going to take his money. He's going to get out, and Roman's story ends ambiguously, but with him trying to, repair his legacy, repair his dad's legacy, do his own thing. And I'll be honest with you, I've ended almost all of these the same way, by the way. I don't think Kendall makes it out of this season or
Like
this episode.
like you
I
think that he
think,
ultimately
yes.
dies?
He's the one. He turned into Logan. He's officially Logan. He is the replacement for Logan. I don't think that means he wins. I think that means no matter what he loses, because he did become Logan. But I think maybe a car accident would be fitting if he got run off the road, even accidental. Uh, Kind of a callback to earlier seasons and his arc from the early seasons with the waiter. Or maybe it's intentional. I mean, his wife has left him. His kids don't want to speak to him. He's just lost his company. His father has died.
Yeah,
I don't. I think Kendall made the most sense to fill that role early, and then they tried very hard to make us see, oh, Kendall's changed. Kendall's stronger now. Kendall's more like Logan. And I think that he's finally, he's given up everything to be Logan, and it worked. Like, he's officially the most Logan-esque character in the cast, and then
he's
he's
a
going to fail.
killer.
Yeah, and then he's going to fail. And I think that that's going to be too much for him to handle. And I don't know if they show it. I don't know how explicit it is, but I think he's the one who ultimately ends up not in a good spot, or not in an acceptable spot. They all end up, again, none of them end up in power. They all end up out in the cold, away from the Waystar RoyCo family. But I just don't think I don't see the positives for Kendall. He doesn't reconcile. He doesn't start a new company. He doesn't do anything. I think he's the most likely person to just end up in a ditch someplace.
No, that makes sense. And the big question throughout the series, I've always wondered and asked is, does Kendall really have a good heart deep down? Like, does he truly care? And obviously his addiction problems has been a crux to his character.
Mm-hmm.
And how much has how much has the bad side of him, how much has drugs affected the bad side of him, or is he really like that?
I would say that I think I'm going to get some flack for this. All of the Roy kids possess empathy. And I know that Roman Roy is like literally, voting for fascists. I don't necessarily believe that. He is, by the way, that. I think that that's very intentionally him being, he's so constantly seeking attention. I mean, I think a lot of real life people are like this, that turn to these alt-right, hardline, culturally conservative positions. It's mostly for attention. It's not deeply held. I believe that this is wrong, or I believe that this is a sin, or whatever. It's just because they know it's shocking when you hear these kind of things said out loud. And so when you're someone who craves attention that you didn't get, it's a way to get it. And I actually think that is why Roman is so like deep into far right politics. But I think all of the kids have empathy. They've all displayed it at different points, even in this season. But Ewan Roy, Logan's older brother, spoke candidly at Logan's funeral.
That was one of the best scenes I've ever seen on TV. I love how
And
honest it was and how much it related to the character, and everything he said was right.
yeah,
He
and
said he was a bad man. And see a
and
funeral
so
like that.
and so Ewan at one point has a quote in which he says, "I don't know when, but at some point Logan stopped trying," and it's a real shame. I think that is the moment, upon hearing his uncle say that Kendall, who would eventually end up speaking at the funeral, stopped trying. And that was the switch. When Ewan mentioned that at some point even Logan had a heart, and then he stopped trying. Kendall heard that, and maybe on purpose, maybe just subconsciously, turned it off. Rava's gone, his kids are gone, his brother, his sister, his father is gone. He stopped trying. And so I think that, yes, to answer your question, Kendall had a good heart. I don't think it's there anymore, which is why if he ultimately ends up losing, he could win, by the way. If he ultimately ends up losing, I think that's why he won't, frankly, be able to recover from it. It's like Logan. Well, what would have happened if Logan had ever lost? Like, thinking back to when Kendall tried to take it, when all these different, when Stewie and Sandy tried to take it, like, Logan is nothing without. I mean, not nothing. He's obviously very wealthy and powerful, but Logan as an identity is Waystar RoyCo. That is him. Logan is Waystar. Waystar is Logan. There isn't. That's kind of the whole point of the series.
Mm-hmm.
Who can replace the man who quite literally is the company? And I think Kendall has embraced that. Kendall is Waystar, Waystar is Kendall, and he's ready for it now, ready to do what his dad did, exactly like his dad did. And he didn't realize that all the stuff he said about his dad being the dinosaur that's going to get killed off in the new world is true. And he's adopted this old world mentality just in time to get, hit by the meteor.
Oh man. And you know, the show ultimately, and especially as I gotten older in terms of ending shows, is you really have to do what's right and what the character would ultimately, or group of characters, where they realistically or naturally go with their decisions here.
Mm-hmm.
And especially grappling with the fact that it really wouldn't make sense if one of them got it.
No.
And the fact that you have to do what's right, that none of these people deserve it. And it makes the most sense for them to lose out in this and then show that tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
And it especially, and it's what's right. And I think you make the valid points that no one wins it at the end, because that's ultimately where their roads led to. And especially a critical part was in the end of the towards the end of the season, that if the three siblings did work together, that really would have created some redemption. Might even cheer for them, and it would be sweet. But their action shows they just can't do it together, and that's probably one of the most significant parts of this being a tragedy and being Shakespearean and being a Greek tragedy, that they had the chance to do it and they just chose not to.
Multiple times they had the chance.
And
multiple times, and always one of them at first, and then eventually all three. Happens the same way every time. One of them breaks away openly,
right.
And then the other two who are working together start backstabbing each other secretly. It happens throughout all 4 seasons. There's always a breakaway. Roman is always having a sidebar with Rhea or Jerry. Kendall, again, usually is the one openly trying to take the company. And Shiv, working with Mattson, working with Tom, you know what I mean? Like they're all either secretly or openly against the company,
right.
or the other people in the company, I should say, not the company. They all want the company because the company is power. The company is, that's their holy grail. That's their kingdom.
Yeah.
But yeah, they all turn on each other. First one turns publicly, and then the other two. I mean, Kendall did it this time. He told Roman he shit the bed. He turned on Roman. I mean, he thinks that Roman is dead now in terms of like not a contender. But he said there's got to be one king, and he took out Roman, even though they were working together up until this last episode.
That's right. So with that, can you tell me some of your other theories, or the next theory?
Sure. So I really don't think any of the Roy kids get it. So the other non-Roy ending is that Mattson picks Tom. Again, Tom would make sense. He does have experience, unlike Greg. Greg could still take over at ATN, the disgusting brothers running news over at Waystar RoyCo.
Mm-hmm.
Tom is not particularly strong-willed. He's a bit of a cockroach in that business sort of way. Same as Hugo, same as a couple of the other older heads. And I think that, by the way, in this scenario, maybe in the other one too, all those folks stick around. Jerry, Frank, Carl, CEO, CFO, general counsel, COO, whatever. They all end up sticking around. It's the same kind of crew that we've seen. Tom is at the head because Mattson knows that without Logan, that crew is worthless. That crew can't be in charge because that crew has only ever worked under Logan. So Mattson keeps
especially saw that with Roman, especially.
Well, Roman, yeah, but I think that Mattson says these people were only Logan was the company, so I'll keep everybody there. Tom's in charge, and because Tom is in charge, I'm in charge. In that scenario, I still see Roman leaving. Again, I really don't think Roman stays in the U.S. I think it would almost be fitting that he burned the country down almost single-handedly, and then he, disappears to the UK. Would be a little funny. And this show does have, kind of dark comedy elements, and I think that this would be one of those. I think Shiv, again, gets back with Tom, though. If this is the ending, I don't see it as a genuine reconciliation. Like I would in the other one when they're both basically completely out in the cold.
And sometimes you kind of wanted to see Tom push away from Shiv. Shiv is an awful person. Sometimes I could argue she's the worst one out of the children.
of all of them, you can always argue that they're the worst one. At any given point, they can prove us wrong that they're good people. But
Yeah.
I do think that, again, Shiv has always been after power. She's always wanted her dad's approval, and she's the only Roy with any leverage over a Tom Matson alliance, because I mean, obviously she has her thing with Matson, but also she has, married to Tom. And they say that it's Tom's the child. I don't know if we'll ever know for sure if it is, but it's Tom or Matson's, right? I mean, she's been flirty with Matson. I don't know if they ever actually slept together. It's kind of
Yeah,
implied.
no.
It's implied
Yeah, there's
a
something
couple
for
times.
sure.
So no matter what, if that's the duo in charge, Shiv's got leverage, and she'll use her kid as leverage. She's already started, and the kid's not even born yet.
Hmm.
So
And Tom doesn't believe her that she's
right.
pregnant.
So she's got, no matter, she either got the CEO or the investors, child in her, and so she'll stick around with Tom, and she'll keep her power, on the outside, similar to like Marsha or the other wives and the other women who had a great scene in this last episode, by the way. And then
The
again, I
the,
really,
the you're talking about the Logan
yeah, the Logan
mistresses.
women, yeah,
Oh man.
all sitting
So,
together.
all scenes sitting together, cringe in the story sense, but it shows how messed up that
Well, I
was.
think it was to take care of those storylines. I think it was to tie
Oh
that
yeah,
up.
that'll
They
finish.
don't
We
want,
probably
yeah,
won't see them for the rest of the
yeah,
series. There's no
they
need for
don't
them.
want, the women of Roy. I mean, because Logan Roy's bad with women, we know that. And they don't want to just talk about it anymore. They want it to be done. But also, and this happened in my opinion a little bit with Game of Thrones and Daenerys Targaryen. Fans, because of particularly the way women are treated throughout that series as
Hmm.
well, really just kind of saw her as an avatar. And I think a lot of people still see that with Shiv as like a bit of a feminist avatar,
Right.
and she's not. She's equally as bad as her brother and sister, as her brothers.
Absolutely.
She is. That's how she's written anyway. Now people don't treat her that way because they like her politics a little bit more. She's a woman, and so like I get why people see her as softer, but she is portrayed or written to be equally as bad. And so I think they wanted to get the woman thing out of the way. Shiv even said, he was horrible with women. He couldn't understand a whole woman. That was part of her eulogy for her dad. So they answered the women question in episode 9, so they could focus just on who's in charge for episode 10. Um, and then, like I said, I think Kendall probably in this scenario where Tom is in charge still doesn't make it out of the episode. I think there's only one. My third one is the only one which Kendall makes it out of the episode. But
Any chance you think Tom? I was talking to somebody. What if Tom was the one who's not in a good position at the end, and if he goes out,
so they've been,
because of
yeah.
he's somebody who probably appreciates being rich the most, and it especially if he's not involved in the next phase of Waystar's existence at all. And I mean, if he can't survive any more income like that, like any reason for him. But you were about to mention something with that.
Yeah, when they've done the whole like Tom being tired, and sleep and death a lot of times, and narratively speaking, are tied together.
Hmm.
For obvious reasons, sleep looks a lot like death. But I think that if they killed Tom, it would just, you know, that would almost feel like the Greg ending. This
Yeah.
fourth kind of nonsensical Greg ending where Tom dies and Greg is in charge and the Roys are just in chaos. I think that's why I think the other one, when I said my favorite, fits with the tiredness still. Tom is
Mhm.
tired of this rat race. Like you said, he's the one who can he live without the money? And maybe originally the Tom we first saw couldn't. You know what I mean? He was trying to get rich because he didn't grow up rich like the rest of his family. But I think that the tiredness is not so much a hint that maybe he doesn't make it, but more as maybe he doesn't want it. And again, so in a Matson, I'm gonna say Jerry because I just love that running joke from the first like 2 seasons of it could be anyone, it could be Jerry. So in the Matson, it could be anyone, it could be Jerry ending.
It could
Tom
be.
is out, he's out. He's out in the cold, and what that would have scared him because he loves being rich at first, and I think he does still end up rich because he ends up with Shiv. But he realizes that he doesn't care anymore. He's tired. He's tired of the games. He's tired of the backstabbing. He's tired of ATN. He's tired of all of it. He's got nothing but grief from this family that he entered into to try and get ahead. And I think that again, that's part of why he and Shiv could reconcile because they're both tired. They're both out. They're out of moves. They're out of time. They're out of everything. All they have is this child that they're sharing together and a broken marriage. And I think that they try and fix it in this ending, because there's got to be, this is not full Shakespeare. I think there's got to be glimmers of hope. So even though, yes, the Shakespeare is all the Roys fail, all of our protagonists fail, they don't all end on, they don't all end up dead, which is what Shakespeare would do. Shakespeare would kill them all.
Mhm.
And they won't do that. Nor should they. That was, fine back when Shakespeare was a playwright, but entertainment and storytelling has gone a lot further than here's your main characters, now they're dead. It's gone farther than that, and I think it would be a waste to kill everybody, and I don't think they would. It's not that kind of show. So that's kind of why I think, the bad ending for Tom is actually the best ending for Tom. I don't think he'll die. I think the allusion to him maybe not making it through is him not making it through at Waystar. I think he leaves Waystar, unless of course the CEO one happens and he becomes CEO. But I don't think they've set that up. At one point, it seemed like they might at the beginning of the season with all that, but I don't know if that's what's happening anymore.
Okay, and with that, what is your final theory?
So the final theory is that Kendall does win. So I think that this last episode is going to be a board vote, same as the one that essentially started the season or started the series in earnest. That's why I said I think Greg is going to be important. At one point, Kendall told Roman he had a plan. I think that plan is to give cousin Greg Logan's board seat. He is in the family. He does work at ATN. Kendall thinks he owns everybody, but he thinks he especially owns Greg, who came and worked for him when he was trying to take out his father. He doesn't necessarily know that Mattson is also close with Greg. And so I think that Greg's vote could be a source of drama. And I think Greg ultimately chooses to sell, by the way. I think Greg votes to sell the company, which Kendall doesn't expect. But in this scenario, board votes, Roman does side with Kendall, doesn't go away. He just becomes, like Kendall was, the subservient yes man to Kendall's Logan. I think if that happens, then Mattson leaves, which makes sense. I think that I don't know what happens to Shiv and Tom. I think maybe in this case, if this happens, if someone does have to die, then maybe this would be the scenario in which Tom doesn't make it out. But I think if we have Kendall in charge with Roman as his little puppet, then I think the president-elect Mencken thing has to fall apart. I think that the count comes in and Mencken is not the president. It stirs up a whole, firestorm for the company.
Mhm.
I think that there's a world where Greg and Shiv, feeling scorned after voting to sell and losing their everything, release the info about the waiter, release some more info about who made the call at ATN, making sure that
Ooh.
Kendall stays in the crosshairs. And so I think it still ends with, like I said, Kendall has nothing. Roman is there, but just not really. Shiv wants him gone. Greg is Greg. It doesn't really matter what he wants, but also wants him gone. Connor doesn't factor into any of these. Let's be honest. But he probably doesn't like him either. Why not? We'll say the whole family hates him. He doesn't love, his kids don't love him. His ex-wife refuses to let him see them. He's in the middle of a custody battle. The entire country is rejecting President Mencken and his part in creating President Mencken wrongfully. So I think that if a Roy wins, it will be Kendall. And he'll get to that top of that Waystar Tower for the first time as the real head boss, undisputed, not sharing it, because every other time he's shared it, by the way, with Roman.
Right.
And basically the city and his company will be on fire. And so he'll finally gotten what he wanted, meaning his father's kingdom. And he'll also finally have gotten what he wanted, and that it's burning down. He just didn't think that when it burned down, he'd be the guy standing at the top of the tower. So I think that that's the only way a Roy wins the CEO ship, is if Kendall wins. And if Kendall wins, it'll be kind of early in the episode, so they can focus on all of the things falling apart. And it ends with basically his life sucks now. And he got what he wanted, but, did he?
Like a Fight Club ending, or if you go to the adage, there's this famous saying, "What man profits the world but loses his soul?" They relate that to Kendall winning, but it's the world's on fire. I think that all these are very poetic, and especially that one. And it just, what can the audience get out of the whole story of the Roys? Is it, you know, be careful what you wish for? Family is everything. Choices. If we're gonna go that
Uh,
deep with it,
sure.
and we really can only answer that once we do our reaction pod on Monday.
Well, yeah, so see how it
But
goes.
but I think that's ultimately what was interesting about these showrunners and staff, and also mostly British staff as well, or
Mhm.
mostly British writing staff, and this is their perspective on the American culture like that. And I'm not British, so I'm not going to say what I know what the Brits are thinking or their views on American media
And you can
comment
see it a
life.
little bit.
But is it seems to be at least a more cynical view and more like what's wrong with you people.
Well, I think it's interesting that the cynicism is here too. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe now because season 4 of this show blew up. This show was popular before, but season 4, for whatever reason, just absolutely exploded.
And it
Um,
was legitimate. There's not one bad episode in this series in this
yeah,
season,
no, I mean, and
except
frankly,
maybe
even
like
the
the seventh one.
series,
But
like the series, I think that they're all very good. But
oh yeah.
for whatever reason, this season blew up and is super popular now. And so I think now we're seeing some fans who are maybe a little bit more like because they're just getting in. So maybe they wouldn't necessarily be that as cynical. It's into a
Hmm.
more mainstream audience now, so that cynicism
Right.
is not quite as strong. But I think the earlier fans of the show were also very, even American fans were also very cynical about the way that power and money and media mix. I mean, we see it all the time. Trust in the media is at an all-time low across both parties. One more so than the other, but still, um, like people don't trust
Hmm.
uh companies like a Waystar or in real life like Turner, who owns CNN, or Newsmax, which owns, or News Corp rather. Newsmax different. News Corp, which owns Fox News. Like they don't trust these people to be, the watchers. You know what I mean? They're not the watchers anymore. They see them as the movers. They don't see them as
Yeah,
observing and
they
reporting. They see them as
deciding
creating.
elections and stuff like that
Right.
themselves.
And this show leans into that. Like this show is basically saying, yeah, you're right. These people are not observing quietly. They tell you they are. Journalists and TV personalities say we report the news. Our job is the vanguard for freedom. We're the watchers. We watch the people in charge.
You can
But
only put
they're
so
the
many
yeah,
positive view videos out there showing life
yeah,
decisions and all
exactly.
that, and they
The
literally done that with Waystar videos.
Yeah, exactly. You see the propaganda videos Waystar puts
Hmm.
out. But yeah, I think that this show has always been cynical, and I think it had a cynical audience up until this season. And I think most of the audience is still in on that cynicism. But I do think it's interesting that a British writing staff focused in so heavily on capitalism specifically
Yeah.
and money, because that's, I mean, they're both capitalist nations, obviously, but I do think that they clearly have some opinions about the way Americans do capitalism, uh, that they're not hiding at all. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, I think this show has a legit legacy for a reason. Um, I guess just some other anecdotes before we go. You know what
sure.
would have been funny if you had, especially your last ending, is at the end of everything, say Kendall is the CEO, and it ends with him breaking the fourth wall and saying, "Looks like I'm the succession," and then show ends.
Dun, da, 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 da. Goes right into the theme song. What I think will be funny is if Connor ends up in this episode at all.
Well, that's one of a lot of the last. If they did a comic relief ending and they put Connor as the head of the CEO, the one person who didn't care whatsoever, he just wanted to be happy, and he seemed to have some of the more morals, even though they barely he wasn't in the show as much as his other siblings, but had some legitimate important scenes, especially about being isolated from the family and how they're so different. I mean, he has a different mom than
Mhm.
the
Than the
other
rest of the
three.
siblings. Yeah.
So though I think that'd be another lazy, easy cop out ending. Is there what impact does Connor have, or do you think he's just kind of there with his call girl wife, who as the show grow, I kind of respected her and liked her
Oh
character
yeah,
more. I just
she
thought,
grew well.
yeah, I just thought she was just like, how they portrayed it themselves. You're just a call girl gold digger, but you actually learn there's a lot of morals she has in heart, and
Mhm.
Really could have just left Connor, but she must really do like him and stuff. And
Somewhere deep
there's a
down,
grow.
I rewatched the episode at Connor's ranch with the family doing therapy, which is still, of course, very early. But at that point, they were going to get married, but they hadn't yet. And he was like, "You don't love me," and she goes, "Enough," essentially. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
no,
right.
seriously. Like, she's like, "Yeah, obviously you're really rich, and obviously that's real important. But you're nice, and I like you. You're nice to me, like essentially.
You're
And
nice.
but sometimes that's enough. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
For a guy like Connor, he knows that no matter who he's with, the money is there. You know what I mean? Like the money is a thing. Connor's super rich. He has nothing to spend it on. So like no matter who he's with, they're gonna be into his money.
right.
So you know what? If you like my money and you think I'm nice, that's a decent deal. You can get behind that. And they grew a lot as a couple. I think that the isolation that Connor has kind of expressed, it keeps him isolated from the fallout about what's going to happen. Um, Obviously, he is in charge of he's the ambassador to Slovenia. So so long as Mencken remains president. So I guess if it's an ending where Mencken remains president, then he'll
Slovenia.
move to Slovenia, which could provide some funny comic relief. Him packing to move to Slovenia. But if he gets a more serious role, I think it would come in the form of Roman. Like I said, I think Roman he's in the dirt now, and there's basically two ways that it can go. He can either stay in the dirt and side with Kendall, or he can vote to sell the company as a way to save himself and the rest of his family from the poison that is RoyCo. And so I think that there's a world in which feeling like the isolated brother, feeling like the failure, because Shiv and Kendall are going at it. If one of them is going to be the CEO, like if we're following the story, that's where we're
Right.
leading up to a clash between the two of them and their two visions, with Shiv being Masson CEO and Kendall meeting the family CEO that doesn't support the sale. I could see Connor sort of being a Sherpa for Roman in the dregs, if you will,
Yeah.
of isolation as a way to get him out of it, to get him out of his self pity and get to grieve his father normally instead of pre grieving, and and get him to that last scene where he ultimately casts whatever vote he casts, either for or against a sale, and deciding the future of the company. So I think that if he gets a serious role, that'll be it. It'll be around Roman, because again, Kendall and Shiv will be busy, with each other and with their advisors and stuff. So you need to have something for Roman. He's been one of the three main characters. The three other children are the main characters of the show, essentially,
Right.
especially with Logan gone. So Roman needs something to do on screen. He needs someone to talk to, because this is a show about talking. There isn't, there's no action scene or
There is a
anything like
lot of
that.
talking. That was the other thing
Yeah,
I've always wondered if they are gonna. Don't really see people getting killed off except um
the waiter.
Logan, and he was just really old. Oh yeah, the waiter too, but
Yeah.
not a lot of violence. But you're right, a lot of talking.
Yeah, so Roman as a main character needs someone to talk to. Can't be Kendall or Shiv for the entire thing because they're not aligned anymore. So I think that Connor could fill that role. Doesn't
Hmm.
have to be Connor. It could be Frank and Jerry and Carl. It could be anybody. It's just someone who cares about Roman. No, not even air quotes. Raise the air quotes. Someone who cares about Roman genuinely, even though he's a little, little shit,
Hmm.
needs to help him. And I think that it could be Connor if they're looking for Connor to do something a little bit more meaty in this final episode before the show goes off. But again, they could just keep him in, keep it where his character's been the whole time, as the pure comic relief, where nothing he does is of any consequence for the most part. And they could just show him packing for Slovenia. Like that could genuinely be all he does this episode. Will be very funny. But it will no, it will, yeah, it'll be very funny. But that could definitely be. I could see them doing that too, keeping him in the lane that he's occupied the whole time.
Would be fun. Would be fun. And just a couple more minutes now with the post Succession world, seeing where they go after. I'm just curious for the stars. Who do you think is gonna continue to have a great career? And I'm gonna name some people, and just tell me if you think they're gonna continue to do great work, do years, whether on film, TV, stage, and continue to be an amazing actor. And maybe they could move past beyond this character they're so associated with.
Mhm.
Or do you think, you'll just always be this character from Succession. Like,
Okay.
we'll start with Jeremy Strong, Kendall Roy. I mean, he's won an Emmy. He's an amazing in the terms of acting itself. And if you've seen his other work,
I
whether
have.
it's Trial for Chicago
Yep.
7, um, um, The Big Short,
Mhm.
obviously this. I watched this Amazon movie that he was just in, just was chilling on a Sunday morning, and
That one I probably haven't seen, but I saw the
call
other two.
call Armageddon Time, and he was really good in that. Um,
He's a weirdo, isn't he?
like
Isn't that
in general,
famously like his methods to acting and his
yeah,
personality? Strange,
he's
right?
yeah, he's like a method actor, like a Daniel Day-Lewis, like really into it, like hits his emotion. I think he's gonna continue to have this great career, and he was like really known in the stage world. And I think he'll be a real star, like a real character, like an actor.
Yeah, I think he might go back to the stage world for a little
Yeah,
bit. I
he's
don't
going to
know.
Broadway. He's going to
Yeah,
Broadway right away. He's has a show on Broadway coming opening in a few weeks.
yeah, I don't know if he'll be able to jump right into a new TV show. This is too big a character for that. So I think he'll take some time maybe on the stage. But yeah, obviously again, he already has a career. Like this is not his
Yeah,
first rodeo. So I don't see this stopping that career. I think it only provides, more acclaim to that career. So yeah, I think he's got a pretty decent, future. I'm sure we'll see him on TV once or twice more. Um, as the years get on. But I do think he'll probably take again a stage break, as it were, to
right.
reset, kind of fall out of the public consciousness a little bit. So he's no longer Kendall Roy, but he can kind of just become Jeremy Strong.
For sure. I think he
Again,
cares more about like acting itself, like the art of acting, not
yes,
necessarily being a star.
yeah.
And yeah, it's called his next Broadway show is called An Enemy of the People. Like
All right,
it's
so
very it's
very
a Norwegian
serious.
play. Yeah. So you know what's coming with that.
Yeah.
Um Kieran Culkin. I think it's fair to say he is way more than just being Macaulay Culkin's brother. And
Oh
arguably,
yeah.
he's more famous than him. And arguably, he's had a better career acting wise. And he was a big indie actor for a long time. Also, somebody who was in a lot of stage work. But I really think this is really his breakout role to other things. And he's also did character roles like at TV. He was in Fargo. But I think
Hmm.
he's going to be like the real breakout star.
I think I think I agree with that to an extent. I can think of one other potential, but yeah, um,
One other potential act.
like breakout actor. Yeah, I
Cool.
think
After this, tell me that
Yeah, I
person.
think not Kendall rather. Roman's a really really weird role.
Oh
Like it's
yeah.
funny, but it's dark. It's like it's got this like manic energy, but also this depressive, like which it feels like it's a hard role to do. And he did it and was able to bring levity to like the boardroom scenes and scenes
Hmm.
that with when I again when you have Kendall who plays it super serious, and you have what's his name? Wow, Logan, who plays it super serious in the same scene. Sometimes you needed a chuckle,
Hmm.
which he was able to do. But I don't know if I would call him a comedian or a comedy actor by any stretch. So I feel like it'll be hard for him to maybe peg what he should do next because he's the funniest guy on a very serious show. And so, would you
Yeah,
go funny?
that's one of my things I've never really agreed with. I never saw the show as a comedy as other people. There's obviously a lot of comic relief.
Yeah,
This is way more of a serious drama.
it's a serious drama. And so, does he go into a serious drama and hope that he can get another kind of funny man role? Does he go into something more lighthearted? I don't really know. But yeah, I could see it. I think that he'll just have to figure out what he wants his career to look like going forward.
How about Sarah Snook play Shiv?
I know very little about her, so I don't know what her career has previously been. But she's
Yeah, like
really.
just
I'm sorry, good.
I was just say just she's from Australia and mostly all her work was in Australia and at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I feel like we could see. I mean, if anyone's gonna end up being like, oh, that's XX from Succession, I could see her being, oh, that's Shiv from Succession, like that. Her getting the forever casting. But I
Hmm.
don't know. I don't know. I mean, again, they're all so talented. I would be shocked if none of them could break out again. But I'm sure. I mean, if she's really never really done American television before, I'm sure she'll have a shot now. Yeah,
Right.
either at least a supporting role in another show or in a movie that's based here in America. She has enough of a following in America. She's super talented, so I think that she'll have a good go of it. But I think of all of the people, she probably is the most likely to be like, oh, that's Shiv Roy.
Okay.
As you said in the beginning, like, is it going to be hard to break past the character? I could see her having a difficult time breaking past the character, and you can unpack that a bunch of different ways that we won't get into because it will run too long. But that's what I think.
Tell me, who do you think is that other breakout star?
Nicholas Braun, cousin Greg.
Yes, you
Yeah,
really do. You think though he could break
yeah.
his typecast? Because the other couple of things I've seen him in, he is just acting like cousin Greg.
I don't think he has to. I think that
You think he'll just play that role
he'll
and
just play
live off
cousin
it
Greg,
forever?
but he'll be in
Like
charge.
Ryan
Like,
Reynolds plays Ryan Reynolds and everything,
yeah, I think cousin Greg is it. I mean, people
which is
want him to
fine,
be
by
the
the way. It's not a
yeah.
criticism.
People want him to be the CEO in a very serious show. They're actively there's a group of people actively cheering for a bad ending, just because it means cousin Greg wins. He's likable. A goofy character is likable, and so I think that he's a goof. He'll continue to
Probably
play
the
a
most
goof.
famous character out of everybody. Like the most casual person's probably heard of cousin Greg before.
Well, it's hard because you have to know about the Roys to know cousin Greg. Have it make
Mhm.
any sense? But yes,
His name is cousin Greg.
right. He's on like par with the rest of the Roys, even though he's not a Roy and not part of like this larger conversation. He's definitely in there in terms of like the characters people know. Same with Tom. And so I think that he has potential to really see a lot more roles coming his way. Again, I think they'll
I
all be
hope
this
so.
role.
He's great.
Yeah. They'll
He's a
all be
lot of
this
fun.
role, but they'll write for this role, and he'll get another opportunity to maybe lead a show with a role similar to this one. I think it could absolutely lead to big things for it.
I like it. I like it. How about Brian Cox?
Well, I mean, this to me felt like legacy
Hmm.
for him.
Yeah, it's
Again,
definitely
he's
a
I'm
very
sure.
long career. You've seen
Yeah,
him in a
I
lot of
think
movies.
he's probably just gonna. I mean, he's gonna keep acting. I think. I don't think he's gonna stop unless he physically has to. But I don't see like, oh, he's gonna have another real big thing after this. He might get a couple of things, a couple of offers because this was so popular. But he might honestly say no.
He
I
really is
think
such a
that.
great villain. He just looks like a villain.
Yeah, I think that, but I think Succession is his not his swan song from the profession, but like this is his magnum
Iconic role.
opus. Yeah, and I think that that's that, and I think he knows that, and I think he's cool with it because it is a very iconic role, and he's had a very long career as is. So yeah, I think that he's for sure one that's going to always be Logan Roy. And I don't think he's ever even going to really try to break past that because he's had such a long career that he wanted a role like this. He wanted to be like, in addition to such a long career on stage and in movies, I'm Logan Roy.
How about Alan Ruck as Conroy? And obviously he played one of the most famous. He was in one of the most famous movies of the 80s. He is Cam in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is
Yep.
already an iconic role. And I guess he was pretty much coasting off being Cam
Yeah.
for 25 years till that happened. And
I've seen him in other stuff, actually.
right, for sure. But this is pretty, this is cool with him.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see this necessarily changing the trajectory of Alan Rook's career. He plays the shop teacher in a spoof on Freaky Friday. With
Really?
a horror movie spoof, and I'm blanking on the name. Someone comment on this on YouTube and tell me the name of the movie. It's with Vince Vaughn. It is hysterical, but he's in that and it's very funny, and I do like it. No, but I don't think this changed anything for him. I think this was a cool paycheck, a really nice experience, a second iconic character. Some people don't get one; he's got two,
Right.
and that'll be that. I don't think it'll change much for him at all.
And the last one we'll talk with today here is um and obviously, I mean, we could say Alexander Skarsgård's pretty much
Oh yeah,
A-list, B-list
he's
actor. He's a big deal.
already there. Yep.
He Emma Boss, who was played Marsha Royce, had had an amazing career in Palestine, and then she was in Rami and like Blade Runner
Mhm.
49 and other stuff like that. And what I see her, I saw her in another show recently. I'll remember it. But this is actually a cool question. What do you think is going to happen with Matthew McFadden, who plays Tom?
What's his name? Isn't he Mr. Darcy from Pride and Prejudice too?
He is.
Uh, uh,
You ought to,
I don't
for our
know.
literary fans out there,
Yeah, he's already been in a
with
old
Keira
timey
Knightley.
looking thing. Yeah, I don't know. I think Tom was a fun character. I think he's a good actor. I think he maybe we'll find something. He's kind of the big question mark because for a while everybody was into Tom. Tom was a huge deal. Tom and Greg were like a
Right.
huge kind of deal in this series. They've kind of this season has sort of given him less to do,
Yeah.
which could mean he's already working on something else that's big. By the way, that happens sometimes with the show. If he's got a movie or something and he's got a split time, they'll scale down scenes,
I wonder
but
if it'll be hard for people to hear because he is British, and
oh,
mostly
but I
people
mean,
get his American accent.
He was British in Pride and Prejudice, though.
And that is the most British you can get.
Yeah, so if you need to reacclimate, just watch Pride and Prejudice. You can hear Tom speak with a British accent. He's also done a ton of interviews. I think most people know he's British at this point.
Okay.
So I don't know. I'm not most people. I knew that because I knew he's Pride and Prejudice when I saw him the first time. But yeah, I think most people have heard his late night interviews or his behind the scenes stuff to know that he's actually British. The first time I heard you said her name and I've already forgot it. Shiv.
Sarah
Talk.
Snook.
Yeah, Sarah Snook. I was like, oh wow, she's not American. The first because I didn't know again, I didn't know her beforehand, so I watched one of those behind the scene things, and I was like, oh, that caught me off guard. I wasn't ready to hear that. But yeah,
All right, good stuff. Well, Ryan, now let us see ultimately where this goes. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much analysis we do, no matter what we feel is the right or wrong way to do, it's the writers, it's their story,
we're
and we're
not in the
just here to
writers'
check it
room.
out.
At least not
And
yet.
it's exactly, at least not yet. Remember that. And especially now we have to appreciate our shows as everything's on everything is paused for the writer strike. So we appreciate that. Go to where I think we want to declare we're team WGA.
Yeah,
And
pay your writers,
for sure, definitely. And
or else cousin Greg's gonna win.
didn't I tell you, remember I texted you that the writer said they would spoil it on Twitter if they
Yeah,
don't
they
get
shouldn't
paid
do
for
that.
that.
They shouldn't do that. I don't
That
want
would
that.
be
But
wrong, but
yes, that would be wrong.
let's see what happens. All right, we'll check back in on Monday and we will release it on Tuesday, our reaction to the Succession series finale.
Sounds good.